Well, Wendy am, and welcome back to my channel. uh, Last week I wasn't able to do a video. I was so busy, but I've accomplished what I set out to accomplish. I mean, of course, it's ongoing, but I need to make time to do this as well. Um, this way, I can share my story, my mother's story, and keep my word to the promise I made to my mom. Uh, if I am not mistaken, where we left off last time, um, I had just gotten to Germany and ran into a guy which was crazy in his unit, my ex-husband's unit. Um, I still remember his name, but I'm not gonna say it. Um, and he was saying that, he told us he didn't get married. So, I don't know. I took that personal, but when I talked to him once I got over there, my ex-husband, he says, "Oh no, I just don't like telling them my business." I can kind of understand that, but at the same time, I kind of couldn't when I could. Um, so now I'm in Germany. I'm 17 years old. I was married. And when you are a military wife, your husband or wife, whichever spouse is serving in the military, has to give the other power of attorney to pick up mail, to have access to the bank accounts, and all of that, those things. The ID, you have access to go into the PX and the commissary and all those things. But to get, I guess, the personal things, the money, access to money and stuff like that, you have to have a power of attorney. So my ex-husband did get me power of attorney. And because when he was in infantry, so he would go to the field sometimes. He would go, it might be like 2 weeks where he was in the field, or something like that. Well, I was new over there, so I mean, I knew how to get around. I knew how, we would catch a taxi, because we didn't get military housing, because to get military housing, we would have to stay 3 years. He didn't want to stay 3 years. So we lived on the economy, and we lived out in the country part. If I'm remembering right, we used to live in Linzenjerk, Hofeich. And it was a beautiful country out there, so it was a castle right across the street from where we lived, like a baron lived there, whatever that title meant. And there was a little town around the corner we would walk. It was just really nice. So when he went to the field, I would go on post, and I would grocery shop or pick up the mail. And when I picked up the mail one day, there was a letter. Well, he would get letters from girls from back home, which caused a problem when you're married. And then, and of course, being 17, and I read every last one of the letters. And the ones that didn't attend the wedding, they didn't know we had gotten married, because he didn't tell any of them he got married. Well, what was really funny was there was a letter from, he had a necklace on when he got home, if anybody remember me saying. He had a necklace, and he said he made a mistake and grabbed his friend's necklace because he was getting dressed in the dark. He didn't want to, wake him up, and he grabbed his friend's necklace on accident. Well, there was a letter that came from this same woman that her name was on the necklace. And before he came home, a month before, he had his company took a trip to somewhere in Switzerland, Birch's Garden, something like that, and he met a lady. And in her letter to him, they had been keeping in touch, which I didn't know. Oh, stupid me. Uh, she was telling him that she had a son, from their meeting. Well, no, at this point she was saying she was pregnant, that she had gotten pregnant. And in a rage, I was so upset and so hurt, I tore the letter up. I tore it up. And then I got to thinking, why did I do that? Because I could have presented it to him and told him about it. But of course, when he came back and I told him about it, we fell out. We fell out completely. Um, and I wanted to go home. But at that time, he wouldn't give me the money to go home. He wouldn't give me the money to go home. And being 17 and over in another country and a military wife, I didn't know I could have went to his first sergeant and asked to be sent home, because in actuality I wanted to dissolve the marriage because I was so hurt. Well, he had a friend. He had a best friend that he brought over, and he wanted him to speak for him, like, oh, he loves you, he didn't mean anything by it, she didn't mean anything, that kind of thing. And his friend, we had already gotten to be friends because we used to write each other when they were in Germany. I would write him. I even met well, at the time she was his girlfriend, met his fiance, girlfriend, whatever you want to call her. And so we got to be friends. So he got him over there really to defend what he had done and to convince me that, oh, he loved me. He didn't, she was just an accident, And being that I couldn't go home, we worked it out. Well, we worked through it. Um, so we got in our apartment. When we got our apartment, the little things that I noticed about him, at first we were staying on the first floor because it was someone had rented out the apartment, but they hadn't gotten there yet. So the landlord let us stay there. Well, after that, there was there was like a little efficiency apartment in the basement of the building. And at this time, I had gotten pregnant with our first, and we lived in a basement apartment, and the apartment across from it was like a little. It was a room where it was like supplies. I guess they kept things down there, just like a little supply closet, but it was bigger than just supplies. It was stuff like furniture, little things of furniture that was down there. It was across from our apartment, and it was very creepy. So he would do things like, we would go shopping on days he's off. We would go grocery shopping, and when we come back, he would carry like the groceries downstairs, and I might carry a bag or two. But when I get down there, one day I got down there, I remember particularly our apartment door was jarred a little bit, it was open a little bit. And our apartment, it was just it was an efficiency. It was a kitchen and just, a great big room. So I looked in the apartment, I didn't see him. And it kind of scared me, um, because I didn't know if something had happened. And then he sneaks up from behind me. He was in the little supply room. And it scared me so bad. Like I said, I was pregnant very early on. And I started cramping. So I thought, maybe I was going to lose it. But this is because the little stupid jokes that he thought was funny. So, I made it past that period. I didn't miscarry or anything. And then, the months came. I think I got over there in, I want to say September, October, November, December, January, March, April, May, June. September. Got there in September. So, because I remember I got there in September, our baby was born in June. So, yeah, it was September. And I remember October came, and then November came. And then that time I was still in my ignorance. We were celebrating the holidays. Thanksgiving, I cooked a little Thanksgiving dinner, and his friend came over. And I think some of the people in the building, we got together and we all did something for Thanksgiving. And then Christmas came. And my birthday is right after Christmas. So I was getting ready to turn 18. And I remember the night before my birthday, we were in the bed, we were talking. And then I remember like about 11:50, about 11:45, 50 at night, he started calling me names, telling me that I wasn't nothing, and if it wasn't, and we weren't arguing. That was what was crazy. We wasn't arguing, it was just like a conversation, and then all of a sudden he started saying, well, if it wasn't for me, you wouldn't even be over here. You a high school dropout, and, you this, and, he was saying, okay, and then he started calling me whores, the B word, and I'm thinking, what? It just, because it was no argument, it was just like it just came out of the blue. And I remember thinking, like, I was so in shock, because this had never happened ever between us. We had been together 2.5 years and married. Never happened. So it threw me off completely. You ain't this, you ain't that, and you'll never be nothing without me. And then at 12 o'clock, he stopped and said, happy birthday. I didn't know whether to say thank you or say things back. I just didn't know. But that was the first experience that I had with the covert narcissist. That act was over. And that went into the overt narcissist. Now that I have you where I want you, now I can reveal who I am. So, sorry about that. So, that was crazy. That was really crazy. And then, I can't remember a lot of things that happened in Germany. After that, we were stationed in Fort Irwin, California, and he would let me see. We were stationed in Fort Irwin, California, and by this time we had one son, and he came home. I had left Germany I think I left in March. Uh, yeah, I left late February to March because neither one of us wanted our child born in Germany because we didn't want anything to go wrong when we were trying to leave and him being a citizen of Germany. So I left early before I had, before I got into the later months. And so when I got home, I had my son, and he tried to get home before the birth. He came, let me see, I think he came maybe June 20th. And I had my first son on June 16th. So he made it home, and he was real happy to meet his son for the first time. But I started noticing little things like I breastfed my kids, so he didn't like that. Why do you have to breastfeed him? Can't you give him a bottle? He didn't like that. And then I also noticed he would say stuff like he would want to, let's go so and so, let's go this place, and I'm like, no, I can't take the baby out, because when he got home, the baby, our son, he was like 4 or 5 days old, and I said, well, no, I can't. I'm not supposed to be taking him anywhere. Well, then let's leave him here. I couldn't do that because he's breastfed. And then at that time I lived with my mother and my little brother. And my mom, like I said, she was disabled. Her disability got worse. Her condition worsened over the years. And I said, well, no, I'm not leaving him. So he would get upset because all you care about is the baby. You don't care nothing about me. What about me? And I thought that was so odd for a new father to be jealous, like literally jealous of a baby. But that's what he did. He was upset about it, but of course he bragged. He liked to show our baby off because he was a handsome little baby. He was cute as he could be, and but he was jealous. He was jealous of an infant, and I just thought that was crazy. So one of the things I would say that I didn't pick up on the abuse part, because growing up in an African American home, a lot of times calling each other names, I don't mean derogatory, cussing each other out, but calling each other names, saying little things to each other, that was kind of the norm for us. Because of our father, because of, so we didn't associate that with, how do you say this? Back then, we didn't know anything about emotional abuse, mental abuse. It was just, you get mad at your brother or sister, you old dog. You might say something silly like that. But when you're married, and name calling is not good in any manner. But I didn't realize this because I thought everybody, called names and, stuff like that. So that's just what I thought. And I think that's how I missed the mark on abuse, because he wasn't physical. It wasn't physical abuse. So I completely missed, one thing I always said, I wasn't going to be married to somebody like my dad. Because my dad, from what I remember, he wasn't really a name caller. With us, we might do something he might call nitwit, something like that. But I don't remember him calling my mother bees, and I don't remember that. I have to check with some of my siblings, but I don't remember. Although he was very physically abusive. And like I said, eventually he tried to, he was gonna kill her. So he was so before I said that I didn't know any malignant narcissists personally, I was wrong. I forgot my dad was my first malignant narcissist. So I didn't equate the name calling and stuff with, abuse. I just thought that was the way it was. But that goes to show how we are living in such our disobedience has got us to where we are, and living in dysfunction, it was just normal. And that's not good. So living in dysfunction was crazy. So what I noticed, that was what I missed out on as far as grabbing the fact abusive. That's mental abuse. And when you start hearing that, you start hearing those kind of abusive things all the time. You ain't this, you ain't that, you fat, you ugly, whoever wants you, after a while, that kind of stuff can beat you down mentally. So over the years, he would say things like that to me. We were in California one time, and he had friends over, because I used to cook. He used to cook this for, so, and he'd invite them over. And one day he made the joke. No, I think they were, him and, his friends anyway, they were talking about how Boy George back in the 80s was, she's cute. They thought it was a woman. And I kind of got a kick out of that. So I'm thinking, okay, you do know that Boy George is a boy. He's a male. And when they didn't believe me, and when they realized that they were, lusting over a man, then they kind of, they stopped. And some kind of way, because I think I don't know if he was on the cover of a men's magazine or something. It was not a men's magazine in our house, but some kind of way or another they got on the topic of Playboy covers. And I remember my ex-husband kind of made the joke, at my expense of course, that if I ever posed for a nude magazine, a men's magazine, it would be so hideous, they would have to give that month's issue away for free. And I remember looking at him like, why would you say something like that? And two of his friends said, well, shoot, I'd buy it. And then that kind of shut him down. But what I didn't know back then that I do now is little subtle things to put you down in front of people. That's also part of a narcissistic trait that I didn't know. And I think at that time I may have been like 18, 19. So he would make little jokes, put me down in front of his friends, And a lot of them didn't care much for the jokes. And then, what did he do? It was so much stuff, but I mean, it's been so long ago. That was 30. My oldest son is 42 now, so I'm trying to think, well, what did he do? But he would make little jokes like that. He would tell me how, I'll never get nobody. I better stick with him because if you ever, and then, like I said, I was a high school dropout. And he brought home the book and, helped me study, and I got my GED. And of course, if it wasn't for me, she wouldn't even have her GED. She'd be uneducated. He would do little things to put to lift himself up. He'll step on anybody. Now, the friends he had, uh, when they left, he was buddy in front of them, but when they left, he would talk about them behind their back. I didn't know that too. One thing about narcissists is if you're friends with a narcissist, you are the only friend. They're not your true friend. They're not your friend. And I learned that because he would dog his friends out so bad, you know. He would tell me things about his friends to lift it up. See, I'm a good man. I don't do stuff like that. Look at what they doing. They did this and they doing that, and their wives don't even know this. But me, I don't do stuff like that. I didn't know back then. I didn't pick up on the fact that that was I think the grandiose, where you put yourself higher than people to, make them look low, make you shine a little more. So I noticed that about him. Let me see. I know in California, I got pregnant with my second, and that one, at that time, he was, before I got pregnant, I'm going to say some months before, he was very derogatory. He was telling me how he made a mistake getting married. And, I'm uneducated I'm a high school dropout, so I won't be able to contribute to the marriage, once he get out of the military. And, I just wish I'd have married somebody that at least had an education and some kind of job skills. He would literally say stuff like that. And, it was crazy, the stuff he would say. And of course, me being young and stupid, no, I'm gonna go back to school and I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna do that. And when I first got married, I wore like a 7 and 8 in clothes. And when his time in California was over and I came back home, I'd had our second son, and when he came home on leave too, I'd had a miscarriage, which I guess when he got home, I didn't know in December that I was pregnant. I ended up having a miscarriage when I got to Fort Irwin, California. And because the doctor told me the miscarrying material to bring it to her, so I took it in, put it in a plastic bag, a sandwich bag. Found out that I had lost identical twins. I never knew what they were, boy or girl, because I was so early on. I didn't know until later some of the, dreams, visions that I had. So I remember eventually by the time we left California, we had 2 kids. We had 2 boys. And when I got home from California, my mother was so shocked at my appearance because I had picked up weight. And I thought it was from having the kids. But as you dig in and you study and stuff over the years, I realized that my weight gain and unable to lose weight was because of depression, because of attack on who I was. My self-esteem was beat down. Oh my goodness, you talking about beat down. I just, all the things he said to me. So a lot of people say, oh, when somebody says something like that, oh, you just don't believe it. It's a little more different. It's different than that. It's not just like, oh, well, you don't believe it. Now, coming from the environment that I did as a child and then getting married, it would have been easy for a person to grasp onto that. When you keep telling somebody so long, oh, you ain't gonna never be nothing, you ugly, you this, you that, it's easier for that person to believe that, to start believing it and feel low about themselves than someone that is confident and grew up in a healthy environment that knew to say, oh, please, you know. I didn't grow up in a healthy environment. I grew up in a very dysfunctional environment, and obviously he did too. So that's, you know, that's how it's easier to be beat down emotionally, mentally, you know, that kind of thing. The physical abuse hadn't really started too much then. But the majority of the abuse really started once we got back home. Well, I mean, it started in California anyway. The little things he would say and the put downs. And I don't know, with me, I didn't say things back, you know. Good morning. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. Oh, look at him. Is that a boy or girl?
It's a boy.
Boy. Okay. So there was kind of the beginning of, you know, the narcissistic abuse, to where the first thing that happened right before my birthday, and then it just kind of started subtly, and then it's a build up to the point where it was just horrible. So, and this happened over years. So, the abuse really started once he got home, when he got out of the military, and it was a lot of crazy stuff going on before he got out of the military, because we lived in government housing in Fort Irwin, California, and Fort Irwin, California was it was the housing area and everything. The base is in the Mojave Desert, so you can only imagine, you know, some of the things that happened. The apartment that we lived in, it was haunted. But that's another story I would have to share later on, the events that happened in that house, and, you know, what caused me and my kids to leave a little earlier. But we get home, and, you know, I got home when I was by myself. I lived with my mother and stayed with my mother and my youngest sibling. But then when he got out of the Army, we moved in with his family. And that's where all hell broke loose. So I'm going to stop right here. And because I didn't do a video last week, I'll probably end this one and start another one. And that'll probably catch me up, because right now I'm kind of in a talkative mood anyway. So if this is the experiences that I've gone through and that I'm sharing, if this in any kind of way is helping someone or making someone understand, or seeing what somebody may be going through, certain personality changes and everything like that about themselves, if this is helpful to you, please like, share, and subscribe. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.